This is the Sabbath School lesson for the first quarter, 2022.
Welcome to Lesson 11, Jesus, author and perfecter of our faith, ready for teaching on March 12. It's from the series In These Last Days, the Message of Hebrews. Our author is Dr. Felix Cortes, the Associate Professor of New Testament Literature in the Seventh-day Adventist Theological Seminary at Andrews University. And I'm your reader for today, Dr. Percy Harrold. Sunday, March 6. The righteous will live by faith. Read Hebrews chapter 10, verses 35 to 39. What is God saying to us in these verses? Therefore, do not cast away your confidence, which has great reward, for you have need of endurance, so that after you have done the will of God, you may receive the promise. For yet a little while, and he who is coming will come, and will not tarry. Now the just shall live by faith, but if anyone draws back, my soul has no pleasure in him. But we are not of those who draw back to perdition, but of those who believe to the saving of the soul. Endurance is a characteristic of God's end-time people, without which they will not be able to receive the promises that we read about in Revelation 13:10. He who leads into captivity shall go into captivity. He who kills with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints. And Revelation 14, verse 12, here is the patience of the saints. Here are those who keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. In order to endure, however, believers need to hold fast their faith. As we read in Hebrews chapter 10:23, let us hold fast the confession of our hope without wavering, for he who promised is faithful. And Hebrews 4:14, seeing then that we have a great high priest who passed through the heavens, Jesus, the Son of God, let us hold fast our confession. Paul has shown that the desert generation was not able to receive the promise because they lacked faith, as we read in chapter 3, verse 19. So we see that they could not enter in because of unbelief. Hebrews portrays believers as also at the threshold of the fulfillment of the promises. In Hebrews 9:28, so Christ was offered once to bear the sins of many. To those who eagerly await for him, he will appear a second time, apart from sin, for salvation. And Hebrews 10, verse 25. Not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together, as is the manner of some, but exhorting one another, and so much the more as you see the day approaching. And verses 36 to 38. For you have need of endurance, so that after you have done the will of God, you may receive the promise. For yet a little while, and he who is coming will come, and will not tarry. Now the just shall live by faith, but if anyone draws back, my soul has no pleasure in him. And as needing to exercise faith if they want to receive the promises, we read in verse 39, but we are not of those who draw back to perdition, but of those who believe to the saving of the soul. Paul introduces his exposition on faith with a quotation from Habakkuk chapter 2, verses 2 to 4. Let's have a look at that. Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 2, Then the Lord answered me and said, Write the vision and make it plain on tablets, that he may run who reads it. For the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it will speak, and it will not lie. Though it tarries, wait for it, because it will surely come, it will not tarry. Behold, the proud, his soul is not upright in him, but the just shall live by faith. Habakkuk had asked God why he tolerated the treacherous people who oppressed the righteous. In chapter 1 of Habakkuk, verses 12 to 17, Are you not from everlasting, O Lord, my God, my Holy One? We shall not die, O Lord. You have appointed them for judgment. O Rock, you have marked them for correction. You are of purer eyes than to behold evil, and cannot look on wickedness. Why do you look at those who deal treacherously, and hold your tongue when the wicked devours a person more righteous than he? Why do you make men like fish of the sea, like creeping things that have no ruler over them? They take up all of them with a hook. They catch them in their net and gather them in their dragnet. Therefore they rejoice and are glad. Therefore they sacrifice to their net and burn incense to their dragnet, because by them their share is sumptuous and their food plentiful. Shall they therefore empty their net and continue to slay nations without pity? The prophet and his people were suffering. Thus they wanted God to act. God answered, however, that there was an appointed time for the fulfillment of his promise, and they needed to wait, as we read in chapter 2, verses 2 to 4. Habakkuk and his people lived, like us, between the time of the promise and the time of its fulfillment. God's message continued in Hebrews, "He who is coming will come and will not delay," in Hebrews 10:37. And that was also in Habakkuk chapter 2 and verse 3. "For the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end it will speak, and it will not lie. Though it tarries, wait for it, because it will surely come. It will not tarry." The message refers to Jesus. He is the righteous one, the embodiment of faith, who pleases God and provides life, as we read in Hebrews 10, verses 5 to 10. So beginning at verse 5, "Therefore, when he came into the world, he said, Sacrifice and offering you did not desire, but a body you have prepared for me. In burnt offerings and sacrifices for sin you had no pleasure. Then I said, Behold, I have come. In the volume of the book it is written of me, to do your will, O God." Previously saying, "Sacrifice and offering, burnt offerings and offerings for sin, you did not desire, nor had pleasure in them, which are offered according to the law." Then he said, "Behold, I have come to do your will, O God." He takes away the first, that he may establish the second. By that will we have been sanctified through the offering of the body of Jesus Christ once for all. Why then would he delay? He won't. He already has come to die for us, as you read in Hebrews 9:15 to 26, and for this reason he is the mediator of the new covenant by means of death, for the redemption of the transgressions under the first covenant, that those who are called may receive the promise of the eternal inheritance. For where there is a testament, there must also of necessity be the death of the testator. For a testament is in force after men are dead, since it has no power at all while the testator lives. Therefore not even the first covenant was dedicated without blood. For when Moses had spoken every precept to all the people according to the law, he took the blood of calves and goats with water, scarlet wool, and hyssop, and sprinkled both the book itself and all the people, saying, This is the blood of the covenant which God has commanded you. Then likewise he sprinkled with blood both the tabernacle and all the vessels of the ministry. And according to the law, almost all things are purified with blood, and without shedding of blood there is no remission. Therefore it was necessary that the copies of the things in the heavens should be purified with these, but the heavenly things themselves with better sacrifices than these. For Christ has not entered the holy places made with hands, which are copies of the true, but into heaven itself, now to appear in the presence of God for us. Not that he should offer himself often, as the high priest enters the most holy place every year with blood of another. He then would have had to suffer often since the foundation of the world. But now, once at the end of the ages, he has appeared to put away sin by the sacrifice of himself. And he will surely come again at the appointed time, as we read in Hebrews 9:27 and 28. And as it is appointed for men to die once, but after this the judgment, so Christ was offered once to bear the sins of many. To those who eagerly wait for him he will appear a second time, apart from sin, for salvation. And Hebrews 10:25 we read before talks about that. God's message continued in Hebrews 10:38, My righteous one shall live by faith. Paul states the same in Romans 1:17 and Galatians 3:11. Romans 1:17, for in it the righteousness of God is revealed from faith to faith, as it is written, the just shall live by faith, and Galatians 3:11, but that no one is justified by the law in the sight of God is evident, for the just shall live by faith. Romans chapter 1, verses 16 and 17 is especially enlightening because it explains that the righteousness of God is revealed from faith to faith. Let's read that. Romans 1, beginning at verse 16, for I am not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, for it is the power of God to salvation for everyone who believes, for the Jew first, and also for the Greek. For in it the righteousness of God is revealed from faith to faith, as it is written, the just shall live by faith. What Paul means is that God's faithfulness to his promises comes first, and his faithfulness produces as its result our faith and/or faithfulness. Thus, because God remains faithful to his promises, as we read in 2 Timothy 2:13, the righteous in response to God's faithfulness will remain faithful as well. 2 Timothy 2 verse 13, if we are faithless, he remains faithful. He cannot deny himself. And so to finish the day, why is it important to recognize that our faith results from and feeds on God's faithfulness? How can we learn more to trust in his faithfulness to us and to the promises he has made to us? This lesson was read by Dr. Percy Harrold for Christian Services for the Blind. Sponsored by the Sabbath School Department and distributed through Hope Channel Australia, this podcast is also redistributed by Hope Channel Germany, Christian Record Services for the Blind, and It Is Written. It is also available on SoundCloud and through multiple podcast distributors, including Apple iTunes. Remember, God is always faithful.